Obese's daughter, given to an Apache man as punishment by her own mother, but he loved her as no one ever had. Left with shame she never deserved, she found a home she never expected. By the river's edge, judgment broke and tenderness took root. Tonight, hear how love rewrote what cruelty declared. Hey there, thanks for being here. Leave a like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what you think of the story. Let's keep going. The mirror reflected more than Emily Harrington wished to see that October morning of 1847. Her fingers trembled as she adjusted the bodice of her navy blue dress, the only one that still fit her properly. At 24, she had learned to avoid her own reflection, but today it would be impossible to escape the judging stares at the Morrison ball. Emily, her mother's shrill voice echoed through the marble corridor of the mansion. Are you not ready yet, Margaret? Harrington appeared in the bedroom doorway, her lips contracting in disapproval at the sight of her daughter. That dress again, you look larger than last time. The words cut like glass. But Emily kept her chin up. She had learned, over the years, that reacting only fed her mother's cruelty. It's time, dear. The word dear sounded false, loaded with impatience. Your father is waiting in the carriage. Emily nodded silently, took her white silk gloves, and followed her mother down the stairs and the entrance hall. William Harrington consulted his pocket watch with a stern expression. He briefly raised his eyes to his daughter but said nothing. The carriage awaited them under the October moonlight, and Emily did not know this would be the last time she would leave home. As the rejected daughter of the Harringtons, the Morrison mansion blazed with crystal chandeliers and the rustle of silk gowns. Emily descended from the carriage behind her parents, her gloved hands smoothing the fabric of her dress one final time. The sound of violins drifted through the October air, mixing with laughter and animated conversation from within. Remember, Margaret whispered harshly as they approached the entrance. Tonight you must make an effort. Mrs. Patterson's nephew will be attending. He is a widower from Charleston, not particularly selective. Emily's stomach clenched. Another arranged introduction, another opportunity for disappointment. She had endured countless such evenings, each one ending with her mother's reproachful silence during the carriage ride home. The ballroom glittered before them, filled with the cream of Boston society. Ladies in elaborate gowns swept across the polished floor, their fans fluttering like butterfly wings. Gentlemen in dark tailcoats clustered near the refreshment tables, their voices carrying discussions of business and politics. Emily took her place along the wall with the other unmarried daughters. Though at 24, she was noticeably older than most. The younger girls chatted excitedly about their dance cards and potential suitors, their voices bright with hope that had long since faded from Emily's heart. Miss Harrington, a familiar voice made her turn. Mrs. Catherine Morrison, their hostess, approached with her usual diplomatic smile. How lovely to see you this evening. That shade of blue is quite becoming. Thank you, Mrs. Morrison, Emily replied, though she caught the subtle glance the older woman cast toward her waist. I believe you know my cousin, Mr. James Patterson, from Charleston. Mrs. Morrison gestured to a thin man with graying temples, who stood awkwardly nearby. He's been eager to make your acquaintance. Mr. Patterson stepped forward with a perfunctory bow. Miss Harrington, a pleasure. His eyes swept over her figure with barely concealed assessment before settling on her face. With polite indifference, the pleasure is mine. Mr. Patterson, Emily managed, her voice barely above a whisper. They made stilted conversation about the weather and his journey from Charleston. Emily could feel her mother's watchful gaze from across the room, noting every gesture, every pause in conversation. When Mr. Patterson excused himself to procure refreshments, Emily knew he would not return. The evening dragged on with painful predictability. Emily watched couples glide across the dance floor, their faces radiant with joy she had never known. Young ladies were claimed for dance after dance while she remained seated, her hands folded in her lap, trying to appear serene rather than abandoned. It was during the second waltz that she overheard the conversation that would haunt her dreams. Poor Emily Harrington, whispered Mrs. Caldwell to her companion, their voices carrying despite their attempted discretion, still unmarried at her age. Such a burden for dear Margaret, indeed, replied Mrs. Thornton with false sympathy, though one cannot blame the gentleman. A woman of her proportions, and at 24, well, they say her father grows desperate. Perhaps they'll have to consider less conventional arrangements. Emily's cheeks burned with humiliation. She rose abruptly from her chair, mumbling an excuse about needing air, and hurried toward the terrace doors. Behind her, she could hear the whispered conversations continue, each word a fresh wound to her already fragile spirit. On the moonlit terrace, she gripped the marble balustrade and fought back tears. The sounds of the ball continued inside, music, laughter, the rustle of happy lives continuing without her. She had no idea that this moment of despair would be the catalyst for everything that was about to change. The carriage ride home passed. In suffocating silence, Emily stared out the window at the darkened Boston streets, her reflection ghost-like in the glass. Margaret sat rigid beside her, the disappointment radiating from her like heat from a furnace. William consulted his pocket watch repeatedly, his jaw set in stone. It wasn't until they reached the marble steps of the Harrington mansion that the storm broke. Inside, now, Margaret's voice cut through the October night like a blade. The servants scattered as the family entered the foyer. Margaret's heels clicked ominously against the marble as she strode toward the drawing room, her silk gown rustling with barely contained fury. Emily followed reluctantly, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Sit," Margaret commanded, pointing to the velvet settee near the fireplace. Emily perched on the edge of the seat while her mother began to pace, her movements sharp and predatory. William positioned himself by the mantelpiece, his expression grave. 24 years. Margaret began, her voice deceptively calm. 24 years I have endured the pitying looks, the whispered conversations, the humiliation of having an unmarriageable daughter. Emily flinched but remained silent. Your brothers made advantageous matches before their 22nd birthdays. Your sister Catherine was engaged at 19. But you? Margaret's voice rose dangerously. You continue to be nothing more than a burden, a constant reminder of my failure as a mother. Margaret, William warned quietly. But his wife whirled on him. Don't you dare defend her, William. Not after tonight's spectacle. Did you see how quickly Mr. Patterson excused himself? Did you witness the looks we received? Tears stung Emily's eyes, but she blinked them back. She had learned long ago that showing weakness only fueled her mother's cruelty. I've tried everything, Margaret continued, her pacing becoming more agitated. Dancing lessons, French tutoring, new gowns, introductions to every eligible bachelor from here to Charleston. Nothing works because nothing can change what you are, a fat, useless spinster who brings shame to this family. The words hit like physical blows. Emily's hands trembled in her lap as she struggled to maintain her composure. William cleared his throat uncomfortably. Perhaps we should discuss this in the morning, when emotions aren't so. No. Margaret's eyes blazed with determination. I will not spend another season watching my daughter embarrass us. I will not endure another year of whispered gossip and pitying glances. She stopped pacing and fixed Emily with a cold stare that made her blood freeze. There is a solution, Margaret said slowly, her voice taking on a calculating tone. Your father has been corresponding with government officials about treaties with the Western territories. There are arrangements being made, exchanges of goodwill between our people and the native tribes. Emily's confusion must have shown on her face because her mother's smile turned cruel. You will be married, Emily. Finally, you will serve a purpose for this family. Married? Emily's voice cracked. To whom? William shifted uncomfortably by the fireplace, his eyes avoiding his daughter's face. To a Cherokee chief named Red Bear, Margaret announced with satisfaction. You leave for the Oklahoma Territory next week. The room spun around Emily as the words sank in. Her mother had just arranged her marriage to a complete stranger, a man from an entirely different world. as casually as she might arrange a dinner party. "You cannot be serious," Emily whispered. "I have never been more serious in my life." Margaret replied coldly, "You wanted to be useful, didn't you? Well, now you can serve your country and rid us of our burden simultaneously." In that moment, Emily realized her life as she knew it was over. The wagon lurched over another rut in the primitive road, jolting Emily from her fitful doze. 7 days had passed since leaving Boston, and the civilized world she had known seemed like a distant dream. The landscape had gradually transformed from rolling green hills to vast prairies that stretched endlessly toward the horizon. Captain Morrison, a weathered military man assigned to escort her to the Oklahoma Territory, rode alongside the wagon with practiced indifference. He had spoken little during their journey, offering only terse responses to her hesitant questions about her destination. "How much farther?" Emily asked, her voice hoarse from the dust that seemed to coat everything. "2 more days. Maybe 3 if the weather turns." The captain replied without looking at her, "You best prepare yourself, miss. Life out there ain't nothing like Boston." Emily pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders. The October air was crisp, carrying scents she had never experienced: wild grass, earth, and something indefinably foreign that made her stomach flutter with anxiety. Her traveling trunk, packed hastily by the household staff, contained everything her mother deemed necessary for her new life: practical dresses, sturdy boots, and a small leather journal her grandmother had given her years ago. Hidden beneath her clothes was the one treasure she couldn't leave behind: a worn book about medicinal herbs that had belonged to her beloved grandmother. Sarah died as a child. Emily had spent countless hours with grandmother Sarah in the conservatory, learning about the healing properties of plants. It was the only time she had felt truly valued, truly seen. Her grandmother never commented on her appearance or marriage prospects, only praised her quick mind and gentle hands when tending to sick plants. "She has the gift," grandmother Sarah would whisper to the roses as Emily mixed tinctures. "She understands growing things." Those memories felt precious now, like golden coins hidden in her heart. Perhaps, Emily thought as she watched the endless prairie roll by, those skills might serve her in whatever lay ahead. On the second evening, they made camp beside a small creek. Captain Morrison built a fire while Emily attempted to prepare a simple meal from their provisions. Her hands, soft from a life of leisure, were already blistering from the work. "You'll need to toughen up quick," the captain observed as she struggled to open a tin of beans. "Indian Territory ain't forgiving to the weak." "What can you tell me about him?" Emily asked quietly, staring into the flickering flames. "About Red Bear?" Captain Morrison was quiet for a long moment, chewing thoughtfully on his tobacco. "He's a good man," he finally said, "respected by his people. Lost his first wife to fever 2 winters back." Emily's heart clenched. A widower, then. She would be replacing a beloved wife, filling shoes that could never truly be filled. "Why did he agree to this arrangement?" she whispered. The captain shrugged. "Same reason your pa did, I reckon. Sometimes marriages ain't about love, miss. Sometimes they're about survival." That night, lying beneath the vast canopy of stars she had never seen from her bedroom window in Boston, Emily wept for the girl she had been. But somewhere beneath the fear and grief, a tiny spark of something else flickered to life. For the first time in her 24 years, she was beyond her mother's reach, beyond the suffocating expectations of Boston society. The prairie wind whispered through the grass, carrying with it the scent of freedom, wild, uncertain, but undeniably real. Tomorrow would bring her closer to her unknown fate, but tonight, wrapped in solitude and starlight, Emily Harrington began to imagine who she might become. The Cherokee settlement appeared through the morning mist like something from a dream, or perhaps a nightmare. Emily clutched the side of the wagon as they descended into the valley, her eyes taking in a world completely unlike anything she had ever imagined. Log cabins dotted the landscape, their smoke rising straight into The still air. Gardens sprawled between the homes, filled with plants she didn't recognize. Children ran between the buildings, their laughter echoing across the valley, while women worked at various tasks, some weaving, others tending fires, all moving with a purposefulness that seemed foreign to Emily's pampered existence. There, Captain Morrison pointed toward the largest cabin at the settlement's center. "That's where Red Bear lives," Emily's breath caught in her throat. A group of men stood outside the cabin, their dark eyes following the wagon's approach. Even from a distance, she could identify him, tall, broad-shouldered, with long black hair that caught the morning light. He stood motionless as stone, watching her arrival with an expression she couldn't read. The wagon rolled to a stop, and sudden silence fell over the settlement. Emily became acutely aware that she was the center of attention, that every person in the community had paused their morning tasks to observe the white woman who had come to marry their chief. "Come on then, miss," Captain Morrison said gruffly, climbing down from his horse. "Time to meet your husband." Emily's legs trembled as she accepted the captain's help down from the wagon. Her blue traveling dress, wrinkled and dusty from the journey, felt absurdly formal against the practical clothing of the Cherokee women who watched from doorways and garden plots. Red Bear stepped forward, and Emily got her first clear look at the man who would be her husband. He was perhaps 30 years old, with strong features carved by weather and hardship. His clothes were a mixture of traditional Cherokee and white man's clothing. Buckskin leggings beneath a cotton shirt, his dark hair decorated with a single eagle feather. They stood facing each other for a moment that stretched like eternity. Emily could hear her own heartbeat in the silence, could feel the weight of dozens of curious stares. "You are Emily," Red Bear said finally. His voice was deep, accented but clear. He had learned English well. "Yes," she whispered, then forced herself to speak louder. "Yes, I am." He studied her face with dark eyes that revealed nothing. "You are smaller than I expected." Emily flushed, uncertain whether this was criticism or observation. In Boston, she had always felt too large, too much. Here, surrounded by people she didn't know, facing a man whose language and customs were mysteries to her, she felt diminished. An elderly Cherokee woman approached from the crowd. Her silver hair was braided with colored beads, and her dress was beautifully decorated with intricate patterns. She spoke to Red Bear in Cherokee, her tone gentle but firm. Red Bear nodded and turned back to Emily. "This is Grandmother Willow. She will help you adjust. The ceremony will be tomorrow at sunset." "Tomorrow?" Emily's voice cracked with panic. Everything was happening so quickly. "It is our way," Red Bear said simply. "Tonight, you rest. Tomorrow, we begin." He turned and walked back toward his cabin, leaving Emily standing beside the wagon with her trunk and her terror. The Cherokee women began to drift closer, their expressions curious but not unkind. Grandmother Willow stepped forward and placed a weathered hand on Emily's arm. "Come, child," she said in heavily accented English. "Much to learn. Little time." As Emily followed the old woman toward a smaller cabin, she caught sight of her reflection in a bucket of water. The face looking back at her was streaked with dust and tears. But for the first time, she saw something besides disappointment in her own eyes. Fear, yes, but also a flicker of determination. Tomorrow she would become Red Bear's wife. Tonight, Emily Harrington would prepare to disappear forever. Grandmother Willow's cabin was smaller than Emily's bedroom back in Boston, but it radiated warmth that the Harrington mansion had never possessed. Bundles of dried herbs hung from the rafters, filling the air with earthy, comforting scents that reminded Emily achingly of her grandmother Sarah's conservatory. "Sit," Grandmother Willow commanded, pointing to a woven mat beside the fire. "We talk." Emily lowered herself carefully onto the mat, her corset making the simple movement awkward. The old woman watched with keen eyes as Emily struggled with her skirts. "First lesson," Grandmother Willow said, moving to a wooden chest. "Cherokee woman must move like water, not like—" "What is word statue?" She pulled out a simple dress of soft deerskin, decorated with delicate beadwork. Tomorrow, you wear this. No more white woman clothes that bind and pinch. Emily touched the smooth leather, marveling at its softness. It's beautiful. Made for Red Bear's first wife, Morning Star, Grandmother Willow said quietly. She was my granddaughter. The words hit Emily like a physical blow. She was not just replacing any woman. She was taking the place of this woman's beloved granddaughter. Sorry, Emily whispered, her eyes filling with tears. I didn't choose this. Grandmother Willow studied her for a long moment. Neither did Red Bear. But sometimes the spirits choose for us. She sat beside Emily on another. Matt, tell me, child, what can you do? Emily repeated, confused. With your hands, can you cook? So, 10 sick ones? Emily shook her head miserably. I can play piano. I speak French. I can arrange flowers. Grandmother Willow was quiet for so long that Emily feared she had confirmed every suspicion about useless white women. Then the old woman surprised her. What are those? She pointed to Emily's traveling trunk, where the corner of her grandmother's herb book was visible. Just books, Emily said hesitantly. Show me. Emily retrieved the worn volume. Handling it like the treasure it was, Grandmother Willow's eyes widened as Emily opened it to a page showing detailed drawings of medicinal plants. You know these plants? Some, Emily admitted. My grandmother taught me about healing herbs when I was young, but I haven't practiced in years. To her amazement, Grandmother Willow smiled for the first time. The spirits have not made mistake. She stood and began pulling bundles of herbs from the rafters. Look, tell me what you see. Emily examined the dried plants, her forgotten knowledge stirring to life. This is willow bark for pain and fever. And this, she touched another bundle. Echinacea for strengthening the body's defenses. Good. Grandmother Willow nodded approvingly. What else? Emily identified chamomile, lavender, and several other herbs, with each correct answer. She felt a small spark of confidence return. Red Bear's people have great need for healing knowledge. Grandmother Willow said seriously. Last winter, many were sick. Our healer, old like me, grows tired. If you can truly learn our plant medicine. The implication hung in the air. Emily might not be able to cook or sew, but perhaps she could contribute something valuable after all. I want to learn, Emily said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. I want to be useful. Grandmother Willow placed a weathered hand on Emily's cheek. Tomorrow you marry Red Bear, but tonight you begin learning to be Cherokee. Woman, real Cherokee woman knows the gifts she brings are as important as the gifts she receives. As twilight fell over the settlement, Emily sat by the fire learning the Cherokee names for healing plants. For the first time since leaving Boston, she felt a stirring of hope. Perhaps this exile might become something unexpected, not just survival, but purpose outside. She could hear Red Bear's voice speaking with other men. Tomorrow she would become his wife. But tonight, she was discovering that Emily Harrington might have something valuable to offer this new world after all. The setting sun painted the valley in shades of gold and crimson as Emily stood before the sacred fire, her hands trembling within the soft deerskin sleeves of Morning Star's wedding dress. The transformation felt profound. Gone were her restrictive corsets and heavy petticoats, replaced by garments that moved like a second skin. Grandmother Willow had braided her hair with small white beads that caught the firelight and painted delicate symbols on her cheeks with red ochre for protection and new beginnings. She had whispered. The Cherokee community formed a circle around the ceremonial fire, their faces solemn in the dancing light. Emily had never felt so exposed, so utterly foreign. Yet somehow the weight of tradition surrounding her provided an unexpected comfort. Red Bear stood across from her, dressed in his finest ceremonial clothes. A beautifully beaded shirt covered his broad chest, and his long hair was decorated with eagle feathers and silver ornaments. In the firelight, he looked like something from another world entirely. Powerful, mysterious. completely unlike any man she had ever known. The tribal elder, a wizened man with silver hair reaching to his waist, began to speak in Cherokee. His voice rose and fell like music, though Emily understood nothing of the words. She caught Red Bear's eyes across the flames and saw something she hadn't expected, not desire, not even acceptance, but a kind of resigned determination. Grandmother. Willow leaned close to her ear. He speaks of two rivers joining to become stronger, of different paths becoming one. The ceremony continued with rituals Emily had never imagined. She and Red Bear each drank from separate gourds, then from a shared one. They walked together around the fire 7 times. While the community sang, their hands were bound with a beautifully woven cord while the elder spoke words that seemed to carry the weight of centuries. When it came time for the exchange of vows, Red Bear spoke first in Cherokee, his voice steady and clear. Then, haltingly, he repeated his words in English. I take you as my wife. I will protect you. I will provide for you. I will be faithful to you. Emily's voice caught as she struggled to remember the words Grandmother Willow had taught her. I take you as my husband. I will honor you. I will learn your ways. I will be faithful to you. The words felt foreign on her tongue, but as she spoke them, something shifted inside her chest. This was real. This was her life now. Red Bear stepped closer, and for a moment Emily thought he might kiss her as would happen in a white ceremony. Instead, he placed his hands gently on her shoulders and spoke quietly, meant only for her ears. I know this is not what you wanted. It is not what I wanted either, but we are bound now. I will not harm you, and I will not force what you are not ready to give. The kindness in his words brought tears to her eyes. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The ceremony concluded with the sharing of a meal prepared by the women of the tribe. Emily sat beside Red Bear on woven mats, accepting small portions of food she had never tasted. Corn cakes sweetened with maple syrup, venison seasoned with wild herbs, berries preserved in bear fat. As the celebration continued, around them, Red Bear leaned toward her. Tomorrow I will show you your new home. Tonight, you may sleep in Grandmother Willow's cabin. I will not. We will take time to know each other first. Emily looked up at him in surprise. In Boston, she had heard whispered stories about what happened on wedding nights, stories that had filled her with dread. This unexpected kindness, this consideration for her fears, touched something deep inside her heart. Thank you, she whispered. For the first time since arriving in the territory, Emily Harrington, now Emily Red Bear, felt that perhaps her new husband was not her enemy, but simply another soul trying to make the best of an impossible situation. The first weeks of married life passed like a careful dance. Between the strangers learning each other's steps, Red Bear kept his promise, giving Emily space to adjust while slowly introducing her to Cherokee ways. Each morning, he would show her something new about their life: how to tend the vegetable garden, where to find the best water, how to read the signs of approaching weather. Emily's hands, soft from a lifetime of leisure, quickly developed calluses from the daily tasks. She learned to grind corn into meal, to gather eggs from the chickens that wandered freely around the settlement, to mend clothes with sinew thread. Each small accomplishment felt like a victory over her former helplessness. The Cherokee women watched her progress with varying degrees of curiosity and skepticism. Some, like Grandmother Willow, offered patient guidance. Others maintained polite distance, clearly uncertain about this white woman in their midst. Emily understood their wariness. She was an outsider, thrust into their community by circumstances none of them had chosen. But it was her growing partnership with Grandmother Willow and healing work that began to change everything. One crisp November morning, young White Dove came running to their cabin, tears streaming down her face. Grandmother, come quickly. Little Fox has the burning sickness. Emily followed as Grandmother Willow hurried to the child's cabin. 4-year-old Little Fox lay on his sleeping mat, his small body burning with fever, his breathing shallow and Labored, his mother, Singing Bird, looked up at them with desperate eyes. "How long has he been like this?" Grandmother Willow asked, kneeling beside the boy. "Since yesterday evening. The fever climbs higher, and he will not drink." Emily knelt on the child's other side, her grandmother's teachings flooding back. She placed her hand gently on little Fox's forehead, feeling the dangerous heat radiating from his skin. "The willow bark tea," she said quietly to Grandmother Willow. "And we need to get water into him. Small sips, constantly." Grandmother Willow nodded approvingly. "You prepare the willow bark. I will gather yarrow for the fever." Working together, they brewed the healing teas while Emily showed Singing Bird how to keep cool, damp cloths on her son's forehead, and how to encourage tiny sips of liquid passed. His dry lips died through the night. Emily and Grandmother Willow took turns sitting with little Fox. Emily found herself drawing on knowledge she hadn't used in years, mixing it with Cherokee remedies Grandmother Willow taught her. When the child's fever finally broke near dawn, his mother wept with relief. "You saved my son," Singing Bird whispered, taking Emily's hands in hers. Word of little Fox's recovery spread through the settlement like wildfire. That afternoon, when Walker's wife brought her baby for Emily to examine a troubling cough, by evening, several women had asked for remedies for various ailments. Red Bear found Emily that night, grinding herbs by lamplight in their cabin. He had moved his sleeping area to one corner of the room, maintaining respectful distance while they grew accustomed to sharing space. "The women are talking about you," he said, settling onto a mat across from her. Emily looked up nervously. "Oh, they say you have healing hands, that you and Grandmother Willow saved little Fox's life." "Grandmother Willow did most of the work. I just remembered things my grandmother taught me." Red Bear studied her face in the lamplight. "You are not the same woman who arrived here weeks ago." Emily considered this, her reflection in the water basin each morning showed sun-darkened skin and hands roughened by work. Her body felt stronger, more capable. But the changes went deeper than the physical. "No," she agreed quietly. "I don't think I am." For the first time since their wedding night, Red Bear smiled at her, not the polite, careful expression he usually wore, but something genuine and warm. "I am glad," he said simply. "The woman who arrived was lost. This woman belongs here." Emily felt something flutter in her chest, a feeling she had never experienced before. For the first time in her life, someone saw her as exactly who she was meant to be. Winter settled over the Cherokee territory like a gentle blanket, bringing with it a rhythm of life Emily had never known. The long, quiet evenings in their cabin became opportunities for conversation that gradually peeled back the layers of formality between her and Red Bear. It began with simple exchanges about daily tasks, how to preserve meat for the cold months, which herbs to gather before the first frost, the stories behind the beadwork patterns the women taught her. But slowly, tentatively, they began to share deeper truths. One snowy December evening, as Emily worked on mending a torn shirt by firelight, Red Bear spoke into the comfortable silence. "Morning Star loved the first snow of winter," he said quietly. "She would always run outside to catch the flakes on her tongue, like a child." Emily's hand stilled on her sewing. He had never spoken of his first wife before, not beyond that initial acknowledgement of her existence. "She sounds joyful," Emily said carefully. "She was." Red Bear stared into the fire, his strong profile etched with remembered pain. "She brought light everywhere she went. The people called her Morning Star not just for her name, but because she was like the dawn, impossible to resist." Emily felt a familiar ache of inadequacy. How could she ever hope to fill the place of such a beloved woman? Red Bear must have sensed her thoughts because he turned to look at her directly. "I do not expect you to be her. I would not want you to try." "What do you want from me?" Emily asked, the question escaping before she could stop it. He was quiet for a long moment, studying her face in the firelight. "I want you to be yourself. The woman who sits up all night with sick children. The woman who asks Grandmother Willow 100 questions about every plant in the forest. The woman who has never once complained about the life that was forced upon her. Emily's cheeks warmed at the unexpected praise. I complain in my head constantly. Red Bear's laugh was rich and genuine. That is honest. I appreciate honesty. Then honestly, Emily said, setting down her sewing. I'm terrified most of the time. Terrified I'll do something wrong, say something foolish, disappoint everyone who's been so kind to me. And honestly, Red Bear replied, I was terrified when you first arrived. Terrified that you would hate this life, hate me, hate everything about who we are. I thought you would make us both miserable. And now I think perhaps the spirits knew what they were doing when they brought you here. The words hung between them like a bridge neither had expected to build. Emily felt her heart beating faster as Red Bear shifted closer on his sleeping mat. Emily, he said softly, May I touch your hand? It was such a simple request, yet it represented a crossing of the careful boundaries they had maintained. For months, Emily nodded, extending her hand toward him. His fingers were warm and calloused as they closed gently around hers. The contact sent an unexpected thrill through her body, not the frightening, shameful feeling she had been taught to expect, but something warm and welcome in Boston. She whispered, No one ever asked my permission for anything. They just decided what would happen to me. You are not in Boston anymore, Red Bear said, his thumb tracing softly over her knuckles. Here, you have a voice. Here, your choices matter. They sat in comfortable silence, hands joined, watching the snow fall past their window. Emily realized that something fundamental had shifted between them. She was no longer just the unwanted daughter deposited on his doorstep, and he was no longer just the stranger she had been forced to marry. They were becoming partners, and perhaps, Emily dared to hope, they might even become friends. Outside, the winter wind sang through the trees. But inside their cabin, warmth was growing in ways Emily had never imagined possible. Spring arrived early that year, painting the Cherokee territory in shades of green Emily had never seen in Boston's manicured gardens. She knelt in the rich earth beside their cabin, planting the medicinal herb garden she had dreamed of through the long winter months. Her hands, now strong and sure, worked the soil with practiced ease. The yarrow should go there, where it catches the morning sun, Red Bear suggested, settling beside her with his own handful of seeds. Emily smiled at him, a gesture that had become natural over the past months. Grandmother Willow said the same thing. I think you to conspire against me, only to make you successful, Red Bear replied, his eyes crinkling with humor. A good husband supports his wife's gifts. The word husband no longer carried the weight of obligation it once had. Somewhere during the quiet winter evenings of shared stories and gentle touches, Red Bear had truly become her husband, not through the binding of ceremony, but through the slow weaving of trust and affection. Their physical relationship had progressed with the same careful patience Red Bear showed in all things. First came the holding of hands during their evening talks, then the brush of his fingers against her cheek when he thought she looked tired. The night he had first kissed her, gentle and questioning, Emily had discovered that desire was not the frightening, shameful thing she had been taught to fear, but something beautiful, when shared with someone who truly cared for her well-being. Emily, Red Bear said now, his voice carrying a note of nervousness she had learned to recognize. I have something to tell you. She looked up from her planting, noting the serious expression on his face. What is it? A messenger came this morning while you were with Grandmother Willow. Your brother Henry is coming. Emily's blood turned cold. The trowel well slipped from her suddenly numb fingers. Henry? Here? Red Bear nodded grimly. With soldiers. They will arrive within the week. Emily sank back onto her heels, her mind reeling. Henry's arrival could only mean one thing. Her family wanted her back. The thought of returning to Boston, to her mother's cruelty and society's judgment, made her stomach clench with panic. They cannot make me go, she whispered, more to herself than to Red Bear. No, Red Bear said firmly, reaching for her dirt-stained hands. No one can make you do anything you do not choose to do. You are my wife, recognized by both Cherokee law and the treaties between our peoples. But Emily's heart hammered against her ribs. They will try to convince you. Your family will have reasons, arguments. They may tell you things that make you doubt your place here. Emily studied Red Bear's face, seeing her own fear reflected in his dark eyes. Are you afraid I will leave? Red Bear was quiet for a long moment, his thumbs tracing gentle circles on her palms. Yes, he admitted finally. I am afraid you will remember the comfort of your old life and forget the happiness you have found here. Red Bear, Emily said, her voice growing stronger with each word. Look at me. He raised his eyes to meet hers. I am not the same woman who arrived here 7 months ago. That woman was a ghost, living a half-life in someone else's shadow. Here, with you, with this community, I have found my true self. I have found love. Real love, the kind I never knew existed. Red Bear's expression softened, hope replacing some of the worry in his eyes. I will not leave you, Emily continued, bringing his hands to her lips to press soft kisses to his knuckles. Whatever Henry says, whatever promises or threats he brings, I will not leave the man I love or the life we have built together. Red Bear pulled her into his arms then, holding her close against his chest. And I will not let them take you, he murmured into her hair. We will face this together. As Emily rested in her husband's embrace, she felt the strength of their love surrounding her like armor. Let Henry come with his soldiers and his demands. She was no longer the frightened girl who could be ordered about like a possession. She was Emily Red Bear, Cherokee healer, beloved wife, and she would fight for her happiness. The dust cloud appeared on the horizon just after dawn, announcing the arrival Emily had dreaded for days. She stood beside Red Bear at the edge of their settlement, watching as the procession of soldiers and a familiar black carriage wound its way down into their valley. Remember, Red Bear said quietly, his hand finding hers, you are not the same woman they sent away. You have power here that you never had in Boston. Emily nodded, drawing strength from his steady presence. She wore her finest Cherokee dress, the one grandmother Willow had made for her, its intricate beadwork catching the morning light. Her hair was braided with silver ornaments Red Bear had given her, and her chin was held high with hard-won confidence. The carriage rolled to a stop 50 yards from where the Cherokee leadership had gathered. Henry Harrington stepped out first, immaculate in his tailored traveling clothes, his pale face showing distaste at the primitive surroundings. Behind him came Lieutenant Colonel Morrison, a stern military man Emily didn't recognize, followed by 6 soldiers in full uniform. Henry's eyes found Emily immediately, and she saw his shock and her transformation. Gone was the pale, soft woman in constraining corsets. In her place stood someone sun-bronzed and strong, comfortable in her own skin in a way Emily had never been in Boston drawing rooms. Emily, Henry said, striding forward with false confidence. Thank God we found you. Mother has been worried sick, has she? Emily replied coolly, not moving from Red Bear's side. How thoughtful of her to worry after banishing me to the wilderness. Henry's jaw tightened at her tone. You look different. I look healthy, Emily corrected. I look happy, Lieutenant. Colonel Morrison stepped forward. Mrs. Harrington, I am Colonel Morrison. Your family has petitioned the territorial government for your return. There are concerns about your situation here. My situation? Emily raised an eyebrow. You mean my marriage to my husband, recognized by both Cherokee law and federal treaty? Emily. Henry interrupted. Surely you cannot be content living like this. He gestured dismissively at the log cabins and cultivated fields. You were raised for better things. Mother has arranged a proper marriage for you. Robert Whitmore, the banker's son from Charleston. He's willing to overlook your circumstances if you return immediately. Emily felt Red Bear tense beside her, but she squeezed his hand. reassuringly. How generous of Mr. Whitmore to overlook my happiness. This isn't happiness, Henry said desperately. This is barbarism. Look at yourself, Emily. You're dressed like a savage, living in squalor, married to a man who loves me, Emily finished firmly, to a man who values my mind, respects my choices, and has given me a purpose I never had in Boston. Red Bear stepped forward slightly. Your sister has found a place among our people. She is respected as a healer, beloved as a wife. Why would you take her from happiness? Henry's face flushed red. Because she is a Harrington. Because she has duties to her family, to her class, to her race. Enough. Emily's voice cut through his tirade like a blade. I am Emily Red Bear now. I choose where I belong, whom I love, and how I live my life. I will not return with you. Colonel Morrison cleared his throat. Mrs. Harrington, your family is prepared to offer significant compensation to the tribe for your return. Gold, supplies, favorable trading agreements. You speak of me as if I were property to be bought and sold, Emily said, her voice rising with controlled anger. I am a free woman, making a free choice. Henry stepped closer, lowering his voice. Emily, please, Father is dying. He wants to see you before. He wants to make amends. For a moment, Emily's resolve wavered. Despite everything, William Harrington was still her father. But then she remembered his cold silence during all those years of her mother's cruelty. His willingness to trade her away like livestock. If Father truly wishes to make amends, she said steadily, he can respect the life I have chosen and the woman I have become. Henry's expression hardened. Very well, we tried reasoning with you. Colonel Morrison, do your duty. The colonel stepped forward reluctantly. Mrs. Harrington, I have orders to escort you back to Boston. By force if necessary. Red Bear moved protectively in front of Emily, and she felt the tension ripple through the Cherokee warriors who had gathered to witness this confrontation. You would start a war over one woman? Red Bear asked quietly. Emily placed her hand on her husband's arm and stepped forward once more. No war will be fought over me, she said clearly. I will go with them, but not because I choose to. I go to spare bloodshed. Red Bear turned to her, his eyes wide with betrayal and pain. Emily, no, I love you, she whispered to him, then raised her voice so all could hear. Remember that. Remember always that I love you, and I will find my way back to you. The Harrington mansion loomed before Emily like a monument to a life she had gladly left behind. 2 weeks of travel had passed in tense silence, broken only by Henry's increasingly desperate attempts to convince her that returning was for the best. Now, standing before the familiar marble steps, Emily felt like a stranger viewing someone else's prison. The servants who greeted them stared openly at her transformation. Gone were the elaborate gowns and carefully styled hair they remembered. Emily wore the simple traveling dress grandmother Willow had made for her, her hair braided with Cherokee silver, her skin bearing the healthy glow of outdoor work. Mother is waiting in the drawing room, Henry said stiffly as they entered the familiar foyer. Prepare yourself, Emily. She's quite upset about your appearance. Emily straightened her shoulders. I'm no longer concerned with Mother's approval. Margaret Harrington sat rigidly in her favorite chair, draped in black silk as if already in mourning. Her pale blue eyes swept over Emily with undisguised horror. What have they done to you? Margaret breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. They've given me life, Emily replied calmly, settling into the chair across from her mother without waiting for permission. They've shown me what it means to be valued for who I am, not what I might become through marriage. You look like a. Margaret couldn't seem to find the words. Like a woman who works with her hands. Like someone who contributes to her community. Like someone who is loved. Emily's voice remained steady despite the familiar knot of pain forming in her chest. Margaret's face contorted with rage. You were raised to be a lady. You had every advantage, every opportunity to make a proper marriage. And instead you've thrown it all away to live like a savage. I've thrown away nothing, Emily said firmly. I've found everything I was looking for. Purpose, respect, love. Real love, mother, not the cold transactions you call marriage. Love. Margaret laughed bitterly. What could a primitive know about love? You've been bewitched, seduced by an inferior race. Stop. Emily's voice cut through her mother's tirade. Like a blade, Red Bear is twice the man of any suitor you ever paraded before me. He sees my worth. He cherishes my mind. He honors my choices, things you never did. Margaret recoiled as if slapped. How dare you speak to me with such disrespect? The same way you spoke to me for 24 years, Emily replied quietly. With complete honesty, heavy footsteps in the hallway announced William Harrington's approach. Emily's father appeared in the doorway, and she was shocked by his frail appearance. Illness had hollowed his cheeks and stooped his shoulders, but his eyes were sharp as they studied his transformed daughter. Emily, he said simply, settling heavily into his chair. You look well. Thank you, father. They regarded each other in silence for a moment before William spoke again. Henry tells me you refuse to stay, that you intend to return to him, to my husband, to my home. Yes, double quotes. William nodded slowly. I've heard reports about you, about your work as a healer. The Cherokee speak of you with great respect. Margaret gasped. William, surely you're not. I'm trying to understand. William interrupted his wife. Why her daughter, who was miserable here for 24 years, has found contentment in a place we considered exile. Emily leaned forward, hope flickering in her chest. Because for the first time in my life, I was allowed to be myself. No one tried to change me, diminish me, or trade me away. I was accepted exactly as I am. William's eyes filled with something that might have been regret. We failed you, didn't we, your mother and I? We were so concerned with what society expected that we never asked what would make you happy. William, Margaret's voice was shrill with panic. She belongs here, with her own people. Do I? Mother dimly asked quietly. Did I ever truly belong here? Was I ever anything more to you than a disappointment to be hidden away or disposed of? Margaret's silence was answer enough. William struggled to his feet, moving slowly to where Emily sat. With trembling hands, he reached into his vest pocket and withdrew a folded document. I had this drawn up when I learned you might return, he said, offering her the paper. It's a statement recognizing your marriage and granting you your inheritance. Immediately, you're free to return to your husband, Emily. You have my blessing. Emily stared at the document through tears, hardly daring to believe what she was reading. Take it, William whispered. Go back to where you're loved. I only wish I had been wise enough to see your worth before you had to find it somewhere else. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Harrington estate as Emily prepared for her departure. Her father's blessing felt like a weight lifted from her shoulders, but also like a bittersweet farewell to a relationship that had never been what either of them truly wanted. William had insisted on providing her with supplies for the journey west, a sturdy wagon, horses, and provisions that would ensure her safe return. More importantly, he had written letters to territorial officials, formally recognizing her marriage and establishing her legal right to remain with the Cherokee. You don't have to do this, Emily, Henry said one final time as she loaded her few possessions into the wagon. His voice carried exhaustion rather than anger now. There's still time to reconsider. Emily turned to face her brother, seeing for the first time the genuine concern beneath his rigid adherence to social expectations. Henry, I know you believe you're trying to save me, but I don't need saving. I need to go home. Home. Henry repeated the word as if it were foreign to him. How can that place be home? Because home isn't where you're born, Emily replied gently. It's where you're understood, valued, and loved for exactly who you are. Margaret appeared on the front steps, her face a mask of cold fury. She had not spoken to Emily since their confrontation the day before, and it was clear she would offer no farewell blessing. "Mother," Emily called out, making one final attempt. "I hope someday you can understand that I'm not rejecting you. I'm choosing life over mere existence." Margaret turned and walked back into the house without a word. William approached the wagon slowly, his weakened body supported by his walking stick. "I've written to Red Bear," he said quietly, "explaining my role in sending you away, and asking his forgiveness for the pain I've caused you both." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "Father, I also wrote to the Cherokee Council, offering medical supplies and funding for your healing work. It's a small beginning, but perhaps I can help build bridges instead of burning them." He reached up to take her hand as she sat in the wagon seat. "I'm proud of the woman you've become, Emily. I should have told you that long ago." Emily leaned down to kiss her father's forehead. "I love you, Father. Take care of yourself." The journey west passed like a dream of freedom. Each mile that separated Emily from Boston felt like another chain breaking away. She traveled with a small military escort, a formality her father had arranged, but the soldiers were respectful and kept their distance. Captain Reynolds, the escort commander, rode beside her wagon on the third day. "If you don't mind my asking, Mom, what's waiting for you out there that's worth giving up all this?" He gestured back toward the direction of Boston. Emily smiled, her heart lifting as familiar landscapes began to appear. "Love, Captain, real love, and a life where I matter. Must be some kind of love," the captain mused, "the kind that sees you for who you truly are," Emily replied. "The kind that asks for nothing but honesty and gives everything in return." As they crested a hill on the fifth day, the Cherokee Valley spread out below them like a promise fulfilled. Emily's heart raced as she spotted the familiar cabins, the cultivated fields, the thin streams of smoke rising from cooking fires, and there, waiting at the settlement's edge as if he had known exactly when she would arrive, stood Red Bear. Emily barely remembered climbing down from the wagon. All she knew was that one moment she was sitting in the driver's seat, and the next she was running down the hillside, her skirts flying, her hair coming loose from its careful braids. Red Bear met her halfway, sweeping her up in his arms and spinning her around as she laughed and cried simultaneously. When he finally set her down, his hands cupped her face tenderly. "You came back," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "I promised I would," Emily replied, standing on her tiptoes to kiss him. "I will always come back to you. You are my homes." As the Cherokee community gathered around them, welcoming their healer back with joyful voices, Emily knew she had finally found where she belonged. 5 years later, Emily knelt in her garden, her hands gentle as she harvested the last of the summer chamomile flowers. The morning sun warmed her back as she worked, and the sound of children's laughter drifted from the nearby schoolhouse, where Red Bear taught Cherokee and English to the young ones. At 29, Emily had found a contentment she had never imagined possible. Her healing practice had grown beyond anything Grandmother Willow had envisioned. People traveled from distant settlements seeking her remedies, and she had trained several younger women in the healing arts. "Mama," a small voice called from the cabin doorway. Emily turned to see her 3-year-old daughter, Morning Sky, toddling toward her with unsteady steps. The child was a perfect blend of both parents, Red Bear's dark hair and strong features, softened by Emily's gentle blue eyes. "What is it, little bird?" Emily asked, scooping her daughter into her arms. "Papa says come see," Morning Sky announced solemnly, pointing toward the settlement's entrance. Emily looked up to see a familiar wagon approaching, this rising from its wheels. Her heart quickened as she recognized the driver. It was Samuel Morrison, the trader who brought news and mail from the outside world twice a year. Red Bear emerged from the schoolhouse, dismissing his students early as he always did when mail arrived. Over the years, Emily had received sporadic letters from her father, each one warmer than the last. William's health had gradually improved, and his letters spoke of changes in Boston. Small but meaningful shifts in how people viewed the Western territories and their inhabitants. Letter from Mrs. Red Bear, Samuel called out cheerfully, climbing down from his wagon with a worn leather satchel. Emily accepted the familiar handwriting with steady hands, no longer feeling the old anxiety that correspondence from Boston once brought. Red Bear settled beside her with morning sky on his lap as Emily unfolded the pages. Asterisk, my dearest daughter. Asterisk, asterisk, I write with news both sorrowful and hopeful. Your mother passed peacefully last month. In her final days, she spoke of you often, though she never found the words to say it aloud. I believe she finally understood that you had chosen correctly. Her last words were to tell you she was sorry. Asterisk, asterisk, I have taken the liberty of establishing a permanent fund for Cherokee medical supplies, administered through your healing practice. Consider it Margaret's final gift to the daughter she never learned to appreciate properly. Asterisk, asterisk, Henry has married a lovely woman named Catherine, who shares your independent spirit. She has been asking many questions about her remarkable sister-in-law. I believe you would like her enormously. Asterisk, asterisk, but the most joyful news I've saved for last. I am coming to visit you next spring. My health is much improved, and I find I can no longer bear the distance between us. I long to meet my son-in-law and granddaughter, and to see the woman my daughter has become. Asterisk, asterisk, until then, know that I think of you daily with pride and love. Asterisk, asterisk, your devoted father. Asterisk, asterisk, William Harrington. Asterisk, Emily's eyes filled with tears, not of sorrow, but of a deep, healing joy. Red Bear's arm came around her shoulders as he read over the letter. Your father will be welcome here, he said quietly. Morning Sky should know her grandfather. Emily leaned against her husband's shoulder, watching their daughter chase butterflies in the garden they had built together. In the distance, Grandmother Willow emerged from her cabin, moving slowly but still tending to her own plot of healing herbs at 93 years old. This life, this beautiful, difficult, rewarding life, had grown from the worst moment of her old existence. The girl who had been rejected, humiliated, and traded away like property had become a woman who was valued, respected, and deeply loved. Do you ever miss it? Red Bear asked softly, as he sometimes did. The comfort, the luxury. Emily smiled, pressing a kiss to his cheek. How can I miss what was never truly mine when I have everything I've ever wanted right here? Morning Sky ran back to them, her small hands full of wild flowers. For Mama, she announced proudly, offering her bouquet with a gap-toothed grin. Emily accepted the flowers with the same reverence she might have once reserved for roses from Boston's finest gardens, because these flowers, like this life, had been chosen freely, given with love, and received with a heart finally open to joy. The sun climbed higher over the Cherokee Valley, illuminating a community where a rejected daughter had found her true home, her authentic self, and the kind of love that transforms everything it touches. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next story.